Still doing it. It's been a while. Don't worry. This isn't one of those videos where the YouTuber comes out and goes, oh, I'm so sorry for being gone, but sorry for being gone. New digs. That's my excuse. But we're back in the building, F. Dot here, and it's time to talk about rosters. That's everybody's favorite videos, right? Not the traditional roster videos. I swear someday we'll get on back to it. But for now, we're just talking about good old-fashioned rosters and how they are made in esports and why they're made the way they are, whether or not that is good stuff. I'm still streaming I'm trying to stream every day, twitch.tv/fswag. Internet's up and down as we move into the new spot, but they're telling me things are going to work out, so things are going to work out. At least that's what my therapist says. Anyway, coming into this one, again, rosters is where I'm focused, and more about the culmination of rosters. When we talk about esports, a lot of the times I say to look to traditional sports more so than the nerds say, right? Some people sit there and go, we should never look to traditional sports ever. No, don't want to see it. I do not see it, which I think is dumb. There's 100 years of broadcasting there. Sports have been around for a long time. Like I said, 100 plus years of being broadcasted, let alone being played. And so when it comes to how to sell the game, right? Baseball, basketball, cricket, it's important to look at the people that have been doing it for so long, right? At the same time, esports is different, and it's different in such that it's kind of come out of it's birthed out of a place of passion, right? Esports is cool. People want to make money off of it, absolutely. But the reason that people who want to make money off of it can actually make money off of it is because it was an institution of necessity almost. Not like I'm going to die if I don't get my Quake, but there was just such a demand for these tournaments got bigger and bigger that there had to be an infrastructure around it. And so I think that's a little bit different than when we look at things like the NFL made in the 70s just because, right? Things like the NBA and the ABA maybe kind of column A, column B, but nobody looks at, nobody looked at, and honestly on the other side, maybe when we look at Call of Duty and Overwatch League specifically, we see that traditional sports world of, all right, money first, baby. But nobody's sitting there having a farming simulator 19 tournament because they want to cake money. And maybe that's the wrong example, but you get where I'm coming from. So there's a lot of reasons to look toward traditional sports, but there's a lot of reasons to allow the gamers to do what the gamers do, right? And balancing both of those equations is the secret. If I knew more about mathematics, I'd reference a unsolved mathematical formula here, but I don't, so go ask Goodwill Hunting. But my point is that that's the juice. Whoever can balance that, I'm saying it's not been balanced. When we talk about rosters, esports has a very different approach than traditional sports. Traditional sports has all this infrastructure. We call it the front office, or at least in baseball they do. I'm pretty sure they do in other sports, but I'm going to use the baseball terminology here. They call it the front office, right? You have your team, your 5, 9, 10, whatever, however many players your game requires. You've got your team, and you've got a coach. And then when we look into some of the more structured sports like the NBA and the NFL, and the MLB, right? The higher you go, the more money there is. Therefore, the more specialization there is, and the more people you can hire because of the more money there is, right? So, I'm sure the first football team had a coach. Now, football is offensive and defensive, like Counter-Strike or Valorant. Now they have an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator, and the head coach, and they all wear a headset and they all talk to each other for different purposes, right? When you look at baseball, there's a hitting coach, there's a pitching coach, and then there's specializations within. There's pitching, there's closers, there's a closer coach, there's a starter coach, right, etc. In esports, we have coach, right? As Counter-Strike and Valorant get bigger and bigger, and we see more and more money come in, maybe Cloud9 will hire 2 coaches. I use Cloud9 importantly. Maybe Cloud9 uses, hires 2 coaches, an offensive coach and a defensive coach, right? So they can specialize. This coach is very good at CT maps. This coach is very good at terrorist maps, and you're able to kind of work off of that. And that infrastructure is all on the field. Traditional sports has more of a robust infrastructure off the field, And esports are just now kind of coming into that. We look at Fnatic a couple of years ago, and they hired one of their ex-players. I'm wrong on this for Flaren. Anyway, they hired one of their ex-players as a CGO, Chief Gaming Officer. And he's kind of the guy that like sits out there and goes, yeah, that dude, he should be on Fnatic. Yeah, that dude, he should be on Fnatic. And that's scouting, right? That's what we call a scout. And that's sort of like the next, an interesting part of when we talk about teams being made off the field. In traditional sports, you have president of basketball operations, you have general managers in baseball, right? And these people's job is to understand the game and figure out where the game is going and essentially make a team. The Yankees aren't a group of guys. How many players are there in baseball? Like 21? I'm making it up. I don't know. There's 9 players on a basketball team, 5 on the field at the same time, right? The Lakers. Lakers are a bad example because LeBron James is there, and I'll touch that later. But like, you know, the New York Knicks aren't 9 guys that got together on Discord and said, we want to make a team, played real good basketball, and then the Knicks said, we'll take that team. The New York Knicks have a general manager, a president of basketball operations, and a slew of other specialized people doing the job, and their job is to essentially say, you know, they have somebody that scouts the talent, they have somebody that looks elsewhere and takes that talent, culminates it, pushes it up to the people, and then the people in charge sit there and go, this is the best team we can make. And then there's somebody that tries to offer trades in order to make the best team. But there's a puppet master, so to speak, a guy with all the clay making the team. And then if you get put on that team, you get put on that team and you got to play. Famously, I'll go back to the Los Angeles Lakers. Famously, Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, had to play with Shaquille O'Neal, and they did not get along. Famously. And that's just deal with it, bro. Whereas in esports, it's the opposite. We have, like I said, Fnatic as a CGO, and we're seeing more of that. Cloud9 just hired Henry G, Counter-Strike commentator, as their general manager, and he is signing Counter-Strike players. Now, I don't know the full in-depth, but from what it seems like on the outside looking in, they just hired Alex, signed Alex, right? 3-year contract, which is public. Crazy. I'm going to put out a whole nother video on why that's such a big deal. But they just grab a player here, they sign him, and it very much sounds like Cloud9 or Henry G for Cloud9 is creating a Counter-Strike team. And the players are just saying, oh, yeah, I'll play. Sure, that sounds like good money. And they're not really involved in the decision-making process. In traditional sports, that's how it works, asterisk. I said before I didn't really want to touch the current Lakers because they included LeBron James, and transcendent players like LeBron James generally have input into the GM, and that's kind of hush-hush. That's not allowed, which is so funny to us esports people. Because in trad sports, when you see somebody, when somebody has influence in the front office as a player, that's a big, like, I'm not going to say no. It's like an open secret. Frankly speaking, LeBron James is the best player in a generation. We can argue about Michael later. He's the best player in a generation, and you want that guy to have input into the team. One, because he's so damn good, you assume he understands the game well enough to put people around him. He does. Smart guy. And 2, you better make that dude happy. Right? With that said, looking towards esports, that's the norm, right? All our teams are just made in some Discord back channel, and then they play real good, and somebody with money throws it at them. You know, your team's solo mid now. There is no team solo mid guy picking the 5 best League of Legends players and going and signing them and forcing them to play together and seeing what happens. It's not how it works. I'm here to say there's room for both. I think it's very interesting when you have a dynamic player. You know, if you have like a faker, if you have if you look at Call of Duty, maybe like a Scump or Simp, right? When you look at fighting games is single player, so like who cares, I guess. But when you look at Smite, right? If I want to give the keys to Barracuda and tell him make a team, go right ahead. Yeah, sure. Maybe that works out. Barra's the man. He's been around for a long time and he can figure it out. If I give the keys to, I don't know, who sucks? Who's a shitty Smite player? I don't know. If I give the keys to Sun Touch, we're gonna crash and burn. So I would rather, assuming Sun Touch, assuming my analogies are terrible, but here, I can give the keys to Barracuda and he can make a great Smite team and they can win because Barracuda knows the game, knows the scene, knows what it takes to win, knows what he needs to win with respect to the team around him. If I give the keys to some, rando schmando, he might be really good at Smite, but he might not understand all those other variables. He'll pick his 4 friends and they'll crash and burn forever and ever and ever. Trifecta, rest in peace. And we can look at these examples and say, well, it doesn't always work. So, frankly speaking, the reason why we don't see that next level of infrastructure with respect to esports is money, right? It's hard enough to get people to pay their damn players, let alone their coaches, let alone their people that pick their coaches and play. Also, not just being the moral high guy, but also money not always there in esports. So there's also that. But that's neither here nor there. Assuming money works out and it's all good, I would like to see more teams kind of transition into the GM role, into the front office role, into the world where there is somebody kind of crafting these teams together and doing that sort of thing. But I don't want to completely eradicate, there doesn't need to be an eradication of the player-dominated teams. But I think there needs to be a moment where we go from player-dominated to front office-dominated, and that be a meaningful switch, and the player-dominated be the exception to the rule. Smite had a famous example of Rival, where Rival, they were Cyclone GG back in the day, right? That old Kalis, Deathwalker, Wolfie, Croatian jungler, Ice Baby, and Vote, right? And Alpha Jackal. I include Alpha Jackal in that coach, right? There are examples of these teams that grind up from the Challenger series or whatever it's called in your game, and bang, yeah, that's it. They done it. They're worth it. And you, as an org, want to just scoop the whole 5 of them up and give them kind of creative control. And that's a decision the GM can make. The same guy that's making individual. If he's out there going, I'm going to puzzle my team together, he can also just recognize the whole damn team is good. And the whole damn approach is good. And that's something he can absolutely go with. And so with that in mind, I want to see a transition there because I think it levels up the industry. We look at a world where, maturity is absolutely a real thing. Just recently, eUnited kicked Hoxer benched Hoxer, from their Rocket League team. And this was rumored not to be the player's decision, but the org's decision. And it's a hot button issue. Listen, dude, and Hoxer has been performing. The team hasn't. Doing all right. But the team missed 2 of the last regionals. Stage 2, whatever. The important part, they haven't been winning. So if I'm the GM, if I'm the, not the owner of the org, but whatever, if I'm the big cheese on campus and I'm in charge of making eUnited Rocket League look good and the team isn't looking good and the team doesn't want to make a change because they're buddies or they like each other, well, somebody's got to be the bad guy. Somebody's got to come in and be like, dude, you're benched. Bro, sorry, I'm taking the college kid. Shouts to Tristan, by the way, who's going to get a lot of bad press because he's probably not going to be as good as Hoxer day number 1. And maybe I'll make another video on the Hoxer Tristan situation. But shouts to Tristan. I wish him luck, and I hope he does the red, white, and blue really, really well. Go eUnited. But the point of the matter is that maybe these guys never would have kicked him. We look at Smite and we look at some of these teams that have lasted maybe too long. People always like to throw Weekend out there. I'm not, but I'll use it because it's the popular example. Like, why not kick Weekend? I'll actually turn back the clock and make some enemies here and throw Incon under the bus. Incon was always my favorite example of a player that, listen, I like Incon. I got no hate towards Incon, much love towards Incon. I hope he's playing Artifact really well. But when I look at Incon's performance on those teams when he was in the Smite Professional League, he was not playing at a professional level, but the fans liked him and his teammates liked him. He's the homie. So why am I going to kick him? Somebody had to come in there and be like, look, he's not good enough to play at this level. He's got to go. but the teammates are going to kick him because they're friends with him. Maybe there's a second level with Incon being a very big content creator, and kicking him off of a team would make you look bad and ruin your reputation, and people 5 years later would call you a backstabber. I was going to say taking the power away from the players, but that's explicitly what I don't want to do. I'm not sitting here say take the power away from the players, but by default, the power should not lie in the players' hands. Players perhaps should earn it. Players are players. They're really good at World of Warcraft, Smite, Rocket League, Call of Duty. They're not necessarily really good at creating a team, understanding workplace dynamics, figuring out interpersonal relationships. There's a famous movie, Moneyball, about how somebody kind of completely ignored all the star value and just looked at all the stats, based on a true story, by the way. Oakland Athletics. Was it the Oakland A's? I'm pretty sure. I don't know. Oakland A's, looking at all the stats and just like big braining. Creating a team is a different skill set than playing on a team. So why do we entrust the players all the time to create their own team? Sometimes it works out. Esports has been doing it for the entirety of esports, but sometimes it doesn't. And maybe we haven't been there because of infrastructure, and we're getting there, and it's a natural turn of events. Maybe we're doing this naturally, and we're naturally getting there, and naturally, Henry G is doing it, and naturally we're seeing these teams grow larger, have more money for infrastructure, and be a little bit more completionist, if you will, with their organization. Maybe that's the case. Or maybe it's a cultural thing. The cultural wars in esports are always there. Nobody wants to take your gamer culture away and replace it with Bud Light Bros. There literally is a Bud Light after show for League of Legends. But at the end of the day, I'm looking at a world where that is the move to a front office would just make better teams. And as a whole, as a rule, the exception to the rule, when there are LeBron James type players, if Dashy comes up and says, these are the players that I want to play with in order to win champs, I weigh those options, and maybe the world of esports is where a lot of these conversations wind up in between trad sports and what we know from esports. Maybe there's a default, but the players have more input. Maybe the players are involved in those conversations, and that's a variable in a way that it's not a variable in traditional sports for the most part. Like I said, LeBron James gets to basically choose who plays on his team. J.R. Smith, not so much. He should, and he got. But I want to see more front office involvement. I love what Henry G is doing. Like I said, I'm going to talk more in a later video about the public contracts that he's doing and how important it is to publicize salaries. But at the end of the day, frankly speaking, players having all the control all the time, I'm sure people are going to be mad at me for saying this, ain't the look. This is how you wind up with a boys club. The Smite Pro League has been looked at as a boys club for a number of years. This is how you wind up with a situation where players rot on a team. How you see storied organizations slouch down because their players are unwilling to admit that their friends can't hang anymore. Give me the big boys. Let's see the front office do the work. I want to see that be the change. We're back to it. Let me know what you want me to talk about. Hit me in the comments, and of course, tweet at me, all that fun stuff. Comments below. Like, comment, subscribe, like I'm supposed to say. Thank you, and we'll catch you later. Peace.